Chapter 75. Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital was segregated. Female patients were on the north wing and males on the south. There were large common rooms between the two wings, which both sexes could eat meals and attempt therapy groups. A pine cleaner odor drenched the entire place. A nut house. This is what it had come to. Laura couldn't believe it. Maybe she was crazy. She was feeling like it more and more. It was hard to maintain belief in your sanity in a world that fought against it with every move you made. She shared her room with a female mannequin. At least that was Laura's first impression. This girl sat in a chair at the desk on her side of the room. One arm was out like a tree branch, pointing at the clock, which read 3:52 a.m., and her other arm was lowered, directed at the air vent on the floor. She was completely motionless. Her eyes, mouth, even her chest appeared still. How could she do that? Why would she do that? Laura didn't feel better knowing the exact time, because it suggested she was already too late. Guilt, which had been averted because she was saving Project X subjects, now weighed heavily on her. She had worked for the group that had brought harm into people's lives. Even though she accepted to stop this and acted on that belief, because she was now failing, she felt complicit with Malik and the other team members. "It's called catatonia," the orderly with glasses spoke. "Stacy can stay like this for hours at a time, then change into another position for hours more. She has gone on like this for as long as a day without saying a word. Don't take it personal, it's just her condition." Laura's cuffs were removed. Freedom. My movement. The two orderlies, however, raised a straitjacket. "Put your arms into these sleeves." Her movement was now. She would rush one orderly, but she couldn't overpower both. Then they would keep her in this jacket for longer. But she didn't have time to wait for another chance. She groaned. "What?" the smaller orderly asked. Fighting these two men couldn't possibly work. Instead of freeing herself, she would be placed into solitary environment here, where it would be impossible to get someone else to harm her. "Really, the jacket's not necessary." She laughed to make light of the matter. "I'm not going to hurt myself." "Sorry, Laura," the man insisted, holding up a sleeve. "Doctor's orders. We need to monitor you for a while before we remove the protection." Maybe there was a chance this catatonic roommate would snap out of her condition long enough to kill Laura, or at least free her. She hoped for this prospect as she obeyed the staff's directions, putting both arms into the sleeves, having these wrap around her body and belted, then locked. Her roommate freeing her just became more difficult. "Why don't you try getting some sleep? I heard you've had a tough night." She obediently lay on the bed. "Can you take off my shoes for me?" she thought, grasping and manipulating things with her feet, would be easier if they were out of the shoes. My socks too, please. The orderly with the glasses did as she asked, putting the shoes and socks beside the bed. Don't worry, Stacy. She can be like that in the dark. He shut off the lights before closing the door. The shadowy figures of Stacy across the room were frightening, to say the least. Catatonia was a condition Laura had never encountered before, only read about in her psychology texts during graduate school. It was so unusual that it was spooky. The condition of Stacy's motionless added intensity to the expectation of her movement. Laura found herself unable to look away from the girl's silhouette. She had to make sure the living mannequin didn't move without her knowledge, not just to intercept the mannequin at a possible conscious moment, but also to be aware of the threatening action, a primitive drive for self-preservation. Hello, Stacy. No answer. She stood up, trudged to the door, and flicked the lights on with her shoulder. She was exhausted. Her legs barely supported her. She wanted to lie back down on the bed and sleep for hours, if not days. But she couldn't allow herself that luxury while even a sliver of hope existed of saving her friends. She checked the place for anything that might be used as a lethal weapon. The closet had no hangers, only wooden shelves for clothes. The desk drawers had no writing utensils or scissors to sever the arteries in her neck. There were no windows or mirrors to break and use as cutting devices, no drinking glasses to shatter. She looked under the bed, careful to avoid falling over, as her absence of arm movement made balance more difficult. No metal components existed in the bed frame. It was all wooden, including the screws. She sat on the bed. Her roommate was her only hope. Stacy? The girl appeared to be 18 years old. She wore white socks, a gray hospital shirt, and pants that Laura was sure to receive for herself in the morning. Stacy's hair was short and brown, partially obscuring her eyes. Her cheeks were spotted with freckles. She made no response, still pointing at the clock with one arm and down to the air vent with the other, as though emphasizing time was slipping down the drain. You're an interesting girl. What happened to you? No response. I need help. No response. Can you hear me? Can you do something for me? Just as a statue. She crossed the room and blew in Stacy's face. The girl's eyes blinked. Some response was a good sign. It meant there might be more response. I need you to kill me. Do you hear me? She pushed Stacy with her shoulder. I need to die now. Stacy just assumed a statue-like state in the new position she had been pushed. She considered what would rouse this girl. The path to consciousness was probably related to the one that drove her into catatonia to begin with. Perhaps she had undergone a trauma that she couldn't face and remained rigid to cope. This rigidity allowed her a sense of control over the trauma. Being in control of her own movement was some control after all. Also, freezing her body was a powerful psychological metaphor for freezing the pain inside so it couldn't be felt. I'm not a good person. I need to die. I've killed 2 girls, a father, a man I'm in love with, and an idiot named Donald. Nothing from Stacy. I've injured a toddler. I deserve death. I'll kill again. All that she said was true. If Stacy was perceptive, she would believe Laura and assume she was a sociopathic serial murderer. But the girl remained a statue. "I don't even believe in God," she lied. "I'm as bad as can be. That's why I need to die. Do you understand? You would be doing the world a favor." With her shoulder, she pushed Stacy again, and the girl fell over, some movement during the fall, perhaps more instinctual than conscious, to brace herself. She ended up face down on the floor, legs and arms sprawled, still as ice. "Damn it, girl, say something." Laura stomped on the girl's hand, which must have hurt. But she didn't cry out or try moving away. When she lifted her foot, Stacy's hand held its position. "What happened to you?" Laura whispered, more to herself. Laura dropped onto Stacy's back, both knees jamming into it. Stacy groaned and breath escaped her lungs. That was some reaction, but nothing more. She stood up and fell onto Stacy again, with the same response. "Look, I can do this all night. You better speak." After the 15th time, her knees hurt. She lay beside the girl, exhausted. The girl's eyes were still open, looking at nothing. Pain was usually a good way to get people to respond. But if this girl shut herself off from pain, perhaps administering more only strengthened her defensive resolve. Instead, nurturing, loving actions might thaw her defenses. "I'm so sorry for hurting you," Laura cooed. "I can't control myself. I need to die. Please forgive me. I really didn't want to hurt you. You're a good, loving girl." She wished her hands were free to run them through the girl's hair for greater impact. "You have a lot of beautiful qualities, I can tell. It was horrible what happened to you. I know what you must have felt," she lied, trying to generate empathy. "It was terrible. I'm glad you found a way to deal with it." The girl blinked. "It's okay. The same thing happened to me. Maybe I deserved it, but you don't. You were just a girl." A tear began to crawl out of the corner of her left eye and down her cheek. "You have a strong, good heart. You're important." "He had no right." Stacy sat up, crossed her legs, and froze. This was progress, movement, emotion. Not communication yet, but progress nonetheless. With some difficulty because of the straitjacket, Laura sat up as well. She scooted very close to Stacy, looking her straight in the eyes. The warmth of the girl's soft breaths touched Laura's cheeks.